Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. As you can tell, we're on location. This is my friend Spencer Holbrook from LettermenRow.com, host site of the Tim May Show. This is my friend Andy Backstrom. He thought I was going to call him something else, but Andy Backstrom from LettermenRow.com, host site of the Tim May Show, which is also on on3.com. Yeah, I've got a cap. I got to wear it. But the bottom line is football season, fellas, starts for Ohio State at the end of this week as we're recording this. And I've got a couple of guests on my show to kind of get things pumped up to a certain extent. Number one, I've got Ben Hartsock, former tight end at Ohio State, talking about the sort of the symmetry between him and Cade Stover, being two fellas who grew up on a farm and both have etched their names into the folklore or the lore of tight end play at The Ohio State University. We'll see whether Cade Stover takes that next step and becomes maybe the greatest tight end in Ohio State history. He certainly has that, might have those chances this season. And then I've got Rick Neuheisel, because the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, this first game for Ohio State at Indiana, is going to be broadcast by CBS for the first time, and I didn't look this up, and I should have, for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
CBS, which as you well know has been identified with the Southeastern Conference for these many years, is going to be televising the Ohio State at Indiana season opener, and it's just a toe dip into the water of the fact that the Big Ten is going to be on 3 over-the-air major networks this year: Fox, CBS, and NBC, which is a big change. ESPN's out the door, so to speak. And then it's going to be on the other affiliates or streaming services or whatever you want to call it, cable outlets, Peacock, etc. So some games are in the Big Ten. But this is an interesting change for the Big Ten. And I don't know, Spence, are you ready for it?
Yeah. I don't love the idea that we're probably going to get more primetime games, selfishly, just because of the schedule that it creates for us. But nobody cares what it creates for us. The fan atmosphere is better for primetime. You can do a lot with your Saturday if Ohio State plays in prime time. I can even go do things in the morning before we come to the stadium and things like that. So I get it.
Maybe you'll get that patio finished.
It's done. From fan perspective, it's going to be a lot of fun. Playing on Peacock, I think, is the worst thing for Ohio State. I can't believe that that's part of the equation, but...
Well, it was on the FS1, you know. They have had some games on FS1 before.
But never fully streaming only. It's always been on some sort of cable, and to go to Peacock, I think is awful. You've got 18 teams in the league in 2024, and there are 6 of them that don't deserve to play on network television anyway. Put them on Peacock. But that's just my opinion on the new TV contract. But overall, I think it's a net gain for the Big Ten on the football field. If you talk about other athletics, I think it's devastating, especially basketball, because of not being on ESPN, not being in sports. But you understand the dynamic. But yes, yeah.
Part of the dynamic of putting it on Peacock is NBC's paying a lot of money to the Big Ten, and they want to upgrade their service. I mean, I've got Peacock because I like watching IndyCar racing. I like watching different things that they have on there, like this past week watching the Tour Championship, rounds, etc. I mean, everybody's looking at this from a business sense, of course, except when it comes to paying the players out of that pot of gold. But we'll get to that maybe some other time. But Andy, what is this 3 over-the-air networks? What does that mean for the Big Ten? Because I think you kind of get lost in that streaming thing or that those premium things and forget about it. All 3 of those networks are going to have games every week.
Yeah, 3 over-the-air networks this year, and then next year we're going to have tops across the entire country, Big Ten, adding 4 more teams. And I just feel like, this is just the conference expanding. It's the way it is going to happen going forward. Also, SEC, Big Ten are going to be in this arms race going forward. And now to have CBS kind of shared among the 2 conferences, it just kind of makes sense the way things are going. And it all intertwines. But, I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I think the coverage teams that they've assembled are pretty interesting. Give us a little bit more diversity for those pregame shows, for the after the game coverage as well. I think I'd be interested to see how it turns out. But as Spencer said, I think that it's tough to ignore what it's going to do for all the other sports. But for football, this is great.
Yeah. I was just wondering, I want to run this by both of you guys, too. We talked about this on LettermenRow.com, our videos that we do post-practice, pre-week videos and things like that. But I want you to give me one player that we haven't talked about before on any of those platforms each of y'all, a guy that you're very curious to see start for Ohio State, the number 3 team in the country, on Saturday against Indiana. A player, we're not going to talk about the quarterbacks, because as we record this, obviously, they haven't even named their starting quarterback. Neither team has, Indiana or Ohio State. We'll see if Ohio State does this as the week goes on between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. But give me one player that we haven't talked about on any of our platforms, speaking of platforms, that you're curious about seeing on Saturday.
One player? Did you say a starter, or did you just say?
No, I didn't say that. I said one player.
Just one player. Well, I didn't know about this, so now you've got me thinking, Tim.
You can't just come up with one player that you're curious about?
No, it's
This
tough.
is live
I'm going to go.
television to tape, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll take Josh Simmons.
Good pick.
Just starting at left tackle for Ohio State after starting at right tackle last year for San Diego State wasn't particularly great for the Aztecs last year, but has seemed to take the jump under Justin Fry. The light has come on, for want of another term, like you like to say, Tim. He's starting at left tackle for the number 3 team in America, and that's a huge, huge deal.
Yes.
His predecessor was just the number 6 overall pick in the country. The expectations could not possibly be higher.
And he's excited about it. I even asked him that very thing. You go from San Diego State, almost an obscure program out there on the West Coast, to the number 3 team in the country. But not just that. Ohio State is fired up about having it. And I want to ask you this. You remember the guys in the transfer portal from a tackle position that they sort of missed, and everybody was all up in arms about it. I mean, he came in here and established that he is their bona fide left tackle, when in fact a lot of people thought he would be contending for the right tackle spot, maybe having a chance to start.
I still think that they missed on those other tackles. I mean,
well, of course they're not here.
Johnny Cornelius is starting at left tackle for Oregon, and he's going to be the linchpin of that offensive line. You talk about, Dylan Wade, who transferred to Auburn, who Ohio State liked from Tulsa. A couple other guys, Jeremiah Byers from UTEP, who Ohio State really liked, is going to start for another top 10 team in Florida State. Those are still misses. And it has worked out better than even maybe Ohio State expected, because he's starting at left tackle now. But Josh Simmons shouldn't be here, because they should have been able to get one in that winter transfer portal. Then it's crunch time in the spring, and you have to go get Josh Simmons. Not that Josh Simmons is a bad player at all. He was the best available when they did it. They still missed, and that's why I think, if you see Josh Simmons struggle a little bit, and you see Byers, and you see Cornelius, and you see a couple other guys, J.C. Latham at Alabama, who didn't transfer, but they missed on, coming out of high school. You see Caden Proctor, who they missed on coming out of high school, again at Alabama.
You just named an entire offensive line of tackles.
And yeah, but what I'm saying is, the pressure's on Josh Simmons because of all of those other talented guys that Ohio State, quote unquote, missed on, and now he's taking that role instead of them. And so
I think the pressure's on Justin Fry and Ryan Day and the coaching staff, because you end up with who you end up with.
Well, and
they have determined he is the guy.
To finish it, so I can let Andy talk, since I've been hogging the mic here.
Yeah. No, I'm just messing with
you. It is pressure on Justin Fry and Ryan Day. I agree, but there were a lot of false start penalties on Josh Simmons last year, and to be stepping into that role with all of that pressure, especially on the road in a Big Ten game. I know it's Indiana, but you've got to see that on Saturday. You've got to see him down in that stance, and even as simple as no false starts in the week 1 against Indiana to prove he can do it on the road in the Big Ten would be a huge win. If he's jumping a couple times there in that first half, I'll be a little more pessimistic about the state of this offense in general, because the left tackle would be struggling then. If he's good though Saturday, then I'll have a really good feel on where this offensive line is.
I'm going the other side of the ball. As much as we talked about the offensive line this offseason, we've also talked about the secondary for Ohio State, and that starts with the cornerbacks, and that's led by Denzel Burke, who has maybe had the best offseason of any Buckeyes player. I mean, we talked about him a ton this offseason, and really, he's been coming out of the coach's mouth too as a guy who stood out. He took that pro mindset, staying in the building later after practice, getting in earlier before practice. He's talked about how he can trash talk a little bit more now that he has his confidence back. That's always been Denzel Burke at his best. And he's the leader of this group. We talk about some position groups, right? The running backs, it's Travion Henderson and then the rest, the wide receivers. As much as I like Emeka Egbuka, it really is Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we talk about the rest.
Yeah.
For the corners, it's Denzel Burke and then the rest. It's supposed to be at least. The first test is this weekend at Indiana. I know they're going to rotate him with Davison Igbinosun, and Jordan Hancock, but he is supposed to be cornerback 1. He's supposed to bring back Best in America, BIA, all of that for Tim Walton and the rest of Ohio State. Will he do it week 1? That's what I'm watching.
Yeah, I think we're going to see all those three cornerbacks on the field many plays, to be honest with you, because they really like to, for example, throwing Jordan Hancock down there. As camp went on and on, he kept picking up these whispers that he could be going against a slot guy on occasion, because he gets Davison Igbinosun, sort of a clone of Jeffrey Okudah, gets him on the field, and they really like Davison Igbinosun, like you just pointed out, the fact of how he's getting his hands on the ball, etc., and is very tough to throw over. So I agree with you. I think Denzel Burke is a big improvement compared to this time a year ago when he was banged up and played anyway. You know, you got to give it up to him from a Warrior standpoint in that regard, but he paid for it a few times. The guy I'm interested in watching, and I'm not going to say Sonny Styles because I said him on our previous video, but the guy I'm really curious to see if he really makes a jump from like just getting him on the field to see if he can make plays to then maybe being a guy that they need to have on the field a lot more is C.J. Hicks, number 11, the Micah Parsons look-alike contest winner. C.J. Hicks, in my opinion, is one of those breakout potential kind of players that more and more he's going to have to play as this season goes on. I think what he and Sonny Styles are going to bring to this offense is one of the reasons why I think it's going to be a much different looking, defense. Is going to make it a much different looking defense compared to a year ago, just from like pure personal talents and the way they're going to exploit those. And so C.J. Hicks is a guy I've got my eye on. I want to ask you this. Name me one Big Ten team, and make this a 10-second soliloquy. One Big Ten team right now, as the season's about to jump into full-time gear, that you've got your eye on as a potential surprise good team or some potential surprise fall off the cliff team. Spencer, I'm going to go back to you, so we'll keep the timing correct.
Oh my goodness, I don't mean to interrupt my own show, ladies and gentlemen, but there is a storm warning, possible storm warning coming for your house or among you and your buddies. You forgot to get tickets for Ohio State's opener this weekend at Indiana. And I'm telling you, gametime.co, the Game Time app, it's here to rescue you and your buddies or you and your family. Heck, for $47 right now, as I'm holding this, as I record this, for $47, you can get into the game at Indiana this weekend. And remember, this isn't a huge stadium over there. Almost any ticket in Memorial Stadium at Indiana is a good ticket, but you can get in for $47, all the way up to good sideline tickets for like in the $80 to $90 range. That's a hell of a deal to watch the number 3 team in the country play its season opening game. And remember, you can find it on gametime.co or the Game Time app. You download the Game Time app and you use the Game Time app to make your purchase, and you use the promo code Buckeyes, you get $20 off that first purchase. You know what I'm telling you there. You can do the math. $20 off the first purchase if you use the promo code Buckeyes. And remember, terms do apply for any purchases on the Game Time app or the Game Time app or gametime.co. And also another thing to remember is the Game Time guarantee, that if you find any ticket for cheaper than that in that same row you're buying your ticket in, if you find it for cheaper somewhere else, the Game Time app, gametime.co, will refund you 110% of the difference between that price and the price you paid on Game Time. So you can't go wrong one way or the other. And remember, terms always apply to these kind of guarantees. But if you're in trouble right now and you've got to get those opening day tickets for the third-ranked Buckeyes for the 2023 season, September 2nd in Indiana, gametime.co, the Game Time app, they're the place to go.
I'll go with Wisconsin as a fall-off-the-cliff team. A lot of people are very high on this Wisconsin team. I've seen Tanner Mordecai against good defenses. It hasn't been good. When he was at SMU, it wasn't great. I've seen year ones before of programs that should be good with good coaches. Year one is hard. It's hard. And they're going from that ground and pound scheme to Phil Longo, who knows how to run the ball, but is a pass-heavy guy. I think those tendencies start to show toward the end of the year. I don't I don't see it with Wisconsin being the Big Ten West team this year. I just don't.
That's a good pick. I've got to think of somebody else now. Go ahead.
Starting with fall off?
Fall off or better than expected?
I'm just going to go the other way with Wisconsin. I think they're going to actually be a surprise team. I think they're the biggest threat to Ohio State in the regular season. I know Michigan is obviously a threat too, but I think that's upset potential down there in Madison. You're coming off a game against Penn State, highly anticipated game, probably the most recruits in this building for that weekend. If you beat Penn State, then you go right there the next week to Madison, maybe a night game. It's a Luke Fickell matchup. I'm not going to make too much of that. He's just coached here before. And that's a lot of transfers, not just Tanner Mordecai. They brought in a lot of talent through the transfer portal. And Luke Fickell commands that. Plus, he was already there at the end of last season. He got a head start on building that program. I do think that's upset potential for Ohio State coming off a potential victory over Penn State here. So that's my pick, Wisconsin. I think they win the Big Ten West.
You know, it's my pick. I'm not going to dance around because I could counter both of y'all's arguments because I like where y'all went there with the same team. I think Maryland is going to be interesting to watch because I think Maryland is better than it was personnel-wise a year ago. I think Mike Locksley, you know, a lot of guys that we're around a lot don't like Mike Locksley, right? But
yeah.
The bottom line is, I think he's done a pretty good job there. Are they going to knock off the big-time teams in the Big Ten East, this final foray through the Big Ten East? I think they might knock off one. Now, we're talking about Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, or the three I'm talking about there. It's going to be an interesting team to watch. Too bad for Maryland that they come to Ohio State because they've never played well in this stadium since they joined the Big Ten. We know what they've done over there against Ohio State. But so I'm putting Michigan and Penn State on possible upset alert when they take on Maryland because I just think Maryland has got too much going for it right now to not pull off one of those.
Do you remember last year, Tim? Ohio State went to Maryland the week before Michigan came to town.
Remember.
This year, Maryland hosts Michigan the week before Ohio State goes to Michigan. It's the exact same, but it's the reverse where Michigan has to go to College Park before hosting Ohio State. Last year, Ohio State had to squeak one out at Maryland before hosting Michigan. Watch that space. The week before that Ohio State game, Michigan at Maryland. That's a good pick to channel Corso. I like that pick.
And of course, Ohio State, Minnesota. You know that could be interesting at the end of the year. The same weekend. Yeah. Okay, let's get into my conversation right now though with Ben Hartsock, former Ohio State Buckeye, on that 2002 national championship team. He was basically supposed to be the intended receiver, if you remember, on Holy Buckeye. That threw to Mike when Craig Krenzel stepped up and threw it to Michael Jenkins. They really wanted to find Ben Hartsock for that first down and over the middle, and it didn't really materialize. But the bottom line is he's one of the great tight ends who's ever played at The Ohio State University. And let's see what he thinks about not just Cade Stover, but the rest of this Ohio State offense under the direction of this firepower that Ryan Day has brought to bear. Urban Meyer and then Ryan Day have brought to bear in the last decade for Ohio State.
Hey, Ben Hartsock, welcome back to the Tim May Show.
Glad to be here. I'd rather have you on camera with me, Tim, as opposed to you standing there holding the camera.
I know, but I don't want to ruin a good picture. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there watching you talk to Cade Stover. We're at the Big Ten Media Days, ladies and gentlemen. This is a few days later, but sitting there watching you talk to Cade Stover yesterday on your show, on your Sirius XM show, and I'm just going, what's it like for a player to be talking to a guy who's playing in the same position he played, 30 years ago, 20 years ago? It kind of reinforces in your mind, life moves on, right?
I love it. Every one of these guys that comes through, from Marcus Ball to Ryan Hamby to Nick Vanette, every one of these guys makes my own memory that much sweeter. And Cade kind of holds a special place because he's a farm kid.
Yeah.
And it's just wild, especially in this new world with NIL, that he's maximizing on this whole agribusiness side of things, and it's like amazing to see, and he's having the time of his life, and the best part is he's a good young man.
Yeah.
And he's a talented young man with a tremendous bright future. Watching the way that he does things, he's doing it the right way. I mean, that Georgia game, playing hurt, battling. It warms my heart, but it makes my own memories that much sweeter to watch each guy write their chapter in history.
I was going to say, I wanted you to rethink what growing up on a farm, what that gave you. I mean, that's not saying you can't grow up in East Columbus and have the same work ethic and stuff, but what did it ingrain in you? And, like with Cade, he's used to getting up early,
Yeah.
going to bed late, like Carson Hinsman, the guy's trying to be he grew up on a dairy farm,
Yeah.
I mean.
It's interesting. Growing up on our farm, it was just responsibilities.
Yeah.
Now listen, my dad jokes like, dairy farmers work real hard. We weren't dairy farmers. We grew crops, but it was just expected responsibility. Dad would put us in challenging situations. Hey, there's a tractor the size of a home. You're 12 years old. You're going to get in and drive it down the road to this next farm. And there's intimidation that comes from that. And I don't know how driving a tractor down a county road makes you a better football player, but it does somehow, because it was responsibility, and it was your dad who you look up to saying, I think you can do this and you need to go get the job done.
Yeah.
And so just those expectations of responsibility, and like you say, I don't live on a farm now, but I do have my daughters, and I've got we have some animals that, goats and whatnot, that all they have to do is go feed them, but it's a responsibility that I had to do when I was a kid, and they're going to have to do as a kid as well.
Yeah, and plus driving that tractor down the road, not just responsibility, but concentration on a task, right? I mean,
that's exactly,
don't knock over mailboxes and don't run into
situations
ditch.
like that. And you always say, I was joking with Kirk Ferentz yesterday about one of his guys won the hay bale toss at the Soul and Beef Days. And there is something that guys throughout my career, they talked about farm tough, farm strong, that we didn't bale tons of hay, but I did it from time to time. And it's expectation of, we're not going to sit inside all day. You're not going to be playing video games. You're going to be out doing things.
Yeah. Hey, last couple of things though. You're watching this from afar, but not really, because you always got your mind in on it. Should Ryan Day be feeling pressure this year? I mean, obviously anybody that plays football feels pressure to win, etc. But where's your take on this continuing question I get all the time? Is if things don't go well against Michigan or what? I mean, this guy has played in 3 college football playoffs, coached in 3 college football playoffs in his first 4 years as a head coach. Won the Big Ten one of those times. I mean, where's your thought process in that?
Yeah, it's the question I asked the players yesterday.
2 Big Ten championships, actually.
The expectations are unreasonable. But I also recognize this is Ohio State, and that's why Ohio State is what it is unrealistic expectations. So it's like a catch-22.
Yeah.
And another loss will bring legitimate questions. Even though I disagree with them, I understand them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We live in an era where, listen, I played under Coach Cooper, and it was 2-10-1, wins-loss versus Michigan. And so 3 losses to Michigan is not acceptable, and we don't live in a time in history where Coach Day will get the tenure or the leash that Coach Cooper got. I don't think it's reasonable, but there will be a lot of voices. It won't be me, but there will be a lot of legitimate sports media voices that will say it's time to bring to question after 3, if there are 3 consecutive losses, which I'd said it yesterday. I can't present it because I can't put it in my mind that would even be a reality, but we're on the cusp of it.
Yeah. Last thing, what do you like most about what Ryan Day has brought to the fore at Ohio State? And I'm asking that kind of like a loaded question because when in doubt, air it out. It's the way I like to say it, but it's not quite that cavalier. You were on a team in 2002 that was quite talented, but almost threw the ball when it had to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're still what I'm saying.
Are you asking about his offensive approach?
Yeah, just his offense. I mean, the offense. No one's ever played offense at Ohio State like Ohio State does now.
Well, I think that what he's done is,
in other words, exploiting what he's got.
Yeah, I mean, look at what he's done. That the pipeline for the NFL that Ohio State has always been, it's at truly the tip of the spear now. With what Brian Hartline and Coach Day at the wide receiver position, what they've done, the quarterback position. I love Craig Krenzel in my era and the legacy of quarterbacks at Ohio State. But now we've got 3 consecutive first-round picks, and the expectation is if it's Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, they're going to be the next top 5 NFL draft pick. And so it is. It's kind of the society as a whole is our standards are insurmountable no matter what, and Ohio State is at the very top level of that, and Ryan Day continues to meet that task.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you go to a play, you just want to be entertained, right?
Yeah.
You go to an Ohio State football game, even though it's entertainment, you want to be entertained and you want to walk away with a win. Right? I mean, if you're a fan.
Yeah,
I mean, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, your question of the X's and O's, I mean, I love his offense, but my connection, that what I feel proud of Coach Day is that he's doing things and meeting that high expectation, but I think that there's a genuine connection, that same connection that I have with Coach Cooper and Coach Tressel. I believe he has that with his players. I remember the first feature they did when Coach Day was taking over. It was one of those game day features. He was talking about renovating his office to make sure players felt like they could approach Coach. Urban was so intense. I don't know that there was that comfort that, hey, Coach, can I ask you some tough questions? I think Coach Day has kind of recalibrated to have that same intensity that Urban brought and raised the bar at Ohio State, but he's brought it to a little more approachable level, and I think that the team and the guys that I see are a little more at peace because of
and the other thing that they've gotten, I don't want me to keep you, but the other thing they've gotten is like Urban was really big on competition every day.
Yes.
Winner, loser, in the practices and whatever. Ohio State is like now gone back to that to a certain extent.
That was the message from Coach Day yesterday.
There's
is
something
that
to be
each
said.
and every day, whether it's a one-on-one rep or an actual one of those tire drills where they're trying to jerk the tire out of each other's hands, there is that when you are trying to, it's like wind resistance. When you're trying to get past Georgia, it's truly national championship or bust for Ohio State, that is a ton of resistance that you have to overcome, and so you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and that's what is. Coach Day kind of alluded to that, is that we have to get back to a little bit more of that this season to punch through to that level.
And Governor, I know you like me calling you that, a nickname, as opposed to Senator Trussell, Governor Hartsock. Last question. Do you like where the Big Ten is headed with the 2024 season of no divisions, Ohio State and Michigan possibly playing 2 weeks in a row? That's really putting the cart before the horse, but good possibility there. What is just your take on that?
I'm grieved over college football generally. A lot of this recalibration of conferences, and a lot of it's the traditionalist in me kind of grieves, but I have to recognize there's no putting that back in the tube. The Big Ten is positioned in as good a position as any, and so that's going to be fine. Ohio State will be fine no matter what, and on top of that, the Big Ten is going to be fine. What does the future look like? Professional contracts, salary caps, I don't know. I hope not, because I call my time at Ohio State, outside of my farm upbringing, my family upbringing, my time as a college athlete at Ohio State was the most formative in my life. If you turn that into a professional endeavor, you really undercut that magic time. Every kid that goes to college, it's a magic time, certainly for football players. And I always say this about football, is the lessons we learned as football players, the fans in the stands learn them kind of tangentially.
Yeah.
And so I hate to see that get muddied, but I recognize that's the future. And I caveat all this to say, game day is always going to be great. That's always going to be spectacular.
Ben Hartsock, welcome back to the Tim May Show, my man.
Absolutely. Anytime. Good to see you, Tim.
I always enjoy moments with the man, he's a man now, the young man I used to cover that I nicknamed the governor, because I still think he could end up being the governor of Ohio one of these days. We'll see where that goes. But, one farm boy talking about another farm boy. It was very interesting, and where this offense can go. Guys, we are living, I keep telling people, we're living in a golden era. We're living in the golden era of Ohio State offensive football. Go to you first, Andy. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is maybe going to be the highest drafted wide receiver since Calvin Johnson in 2007. I keep saying that because it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy that we get to watch, the privilege of having to watch a guy like him, 6'4", 205 pounds, and catch pretty much any pass sent his way. But he's just, the tip of the iceberg. You go down the entire list of wide receivers, tight ends too. I'm really curious to see who emerges as tight end too, whether it's G. Scott, Joe Royer, maybe even Jelani Thurman. I don't know. And so that entire offense, running back to you have 5 guys, 4 of them led the team at least one game last year in rushing. The offensive line is obviously the big question mark. Quarterbacks, it doesn't even totally matter, I think, because you got 2 5-stars. The entire offense is just coated with talent, and they might have their biggest draft class ever after this season.
Yeah, I think so. As somebody who grew up watching Jim Tressel coach the offense, and it's won a national championship, won Rose Bowls, did a great job. I will never say a bad word about Jim Tressel whatsoever, but that was not offensive football. The best play is the punt. I don't think Urban Meyer.
The most important play is football is the punt.
I don't think Ryan Day. I don't think Urban Meyer would agree with that. I watched a lot of those Jim Tressel teams. Why are they punting right now? They need to, that's not really happening much anymore. Which is the first checkpoint when you talk about if this is the golden age of offensive football at Ohio State. I do look up there and see Heisman trophies, but that was when a lot of those were when Vic Janowitz was punting and playing quarterback and had 471 rushing yards, and that's the most in the country. Hopalong Cassidy, it's just different.
He played offense and defense.
Yeah, it's just different football. This is by far the best age of Ohio State football. I think it's just in general the golden age of Ohio State football.
Where Jim Tressel is underrated, though, yeah, he didn't like to play outrageous, over-the-top offense all the time, meaning throw the ball more than you run it. But you go back and watch the Michigan games, you know, he spread the field. I mean, he was running a spread offense 3/4 of the time when they played Michigan and stuff. He would let it loose when it mattered most. Matter of fact, he's supposed to be on this show next week, ladies and gentlemen, you know, barring a snafu of sorts, and I'll have him on along with Matt Wilhelm, one of my favorite contributors to this show, because they both have great insights. And of course, you know why I'm going to have a Jim Tressel on. The first thing I want to ask him is he going to be wearing a sweater vest that has an O and a Y and an SU on it, since Ohio State is hosting Youngstown State, where he's been the president these last few years after being the head coach at Ohio State. And we'll get into a lot of things in that regard. He's been on my show a few times, but it's always interesting to have him on. You know, we talked about something a while ago about the what's the word I would use? Not montage. What's the spread of over-the-air networks where Big Ten football is going to be available now. The one good thing I think Kevin Warren did as the commissioner of the Big Ten, and I've got a guy on, a fellow I've always enjoyed listening to on Sirius XM. I like watching him on television because I think he gives great insights, is Rick Neuheisel, former head coach at UCLA, at Washington, at Colorado. He's been on CBS for a while now, and he's had that Sirius XM show, which I truly enjoy listening to during the season. Let's get to my conversation with Rick Neuheisel.
What do you think? What do you think this whole change from the standpoint of who's broadcasting games and, you know, Big Ten games, et cetera? Now, what do you think it's going to do for the viewer? You think they're going to find it no matter what?
It's like the gold rush, right? Television executives realize how valuable these properties are, how much people love college athletics, in particular college football. And so how do I get more properties? How do I get more on television? And how do I get the big name programs like your beloved Buckeyes on television? And we're thrilled at CBS that we got a little piece of the pie, because you know, the thing with the SEC was running out, and for us to land where we landed with that window that I think we've helped create, that 3:30 window, and get a Big Ten, you know, masterpiece on each Saturday, that's going to be a blast. So we're thrilled to have what we have in the marketplace, but the marketplace is fertile. There's lots of activity in it right now.
A lot of growth going on, you know, NIL seeds, transfer portal seeds, et cetera, and stuff. I mean, you know, former coach and stuff. It just, is this crazy time? How would you explain it if you were?
I think Mac Brown said it best. You know, I interviewed him for my radio show, and he said in 35 years of coaching, we've had more change in the last 2 than the previous 33. That's saying a lot. In all the change of the last 35 years, to have these 2 be that, you know, whirlwindish, it's remarkable, and it's going to take great leadership. And unfortunately, in college athletics, we have nobody that has the job description to look at this thing from 30,000 feet. We have a bunch of really smart people, leaders in the SEC, leaders in the Big Ten, who are now being called the Super 2, but none of these people are looking at it from the vantage point what's best for everybody. They're looking at it what's best for us, as they should. So don't hate the player, hate the game. But I'm worried about mistakes that might take years to unwind.
One last quickie.
Sorry, I got to get
one last quickie. If you could change one thing about the whole system right now, what would you do?
I would negotiate as one, just as the NFL does. Pete Rozelle did it in the early 60s, got all the owners to say, hey, look, we're going to do this as one in terms of our television rights. If we did that in college football, we wouldn't be worrying about the Pac-12 surviving, and the regionalization of college football is what makes it magic.
Yeah, man, Rick Neuheisel, you know, he played the guitar, man. He's an entertainer, and I think he's in the right medium. So, you know, as we wrap this up, guys, I want you to give me one figment, one player, something that you still have a question mark or 3 about, that you want to see maybe cleared up as Ohio State leaves the field on Saturday at Indiana, the number 3 team in the country. What's that one thing, that one question mark that's still lingering for you? Go ahead, Spence.
I want to know if this defense is going to play the 11 best defensive players or if it's going to play the 11 best athletes. I think those are two different things. Last year, I think they played a little bit too much of the who's the best defensive player and not enough of the who's the best athlete. You know, you talk about, you know, those Michigan long touchdowns from Michigan. Somebody could have caught one of those guys had maybe somebody else been in the jack instead of a Jack Sawyer. You know, who could have made a difference there? I think some better athletes on the field in certain positions could have been the difference between getting to Stetson Bennett in the fourth quarter compared to not getting to him when you were playing the same defensive ends. Are the athletes going to be on the field or the defensive players going to be on the field? That means C.J. Hicks, Kenyatta Jackson, Sonny Styles. You know, those are three elite athletes.
Yeah.
And I think this defense is getting more athletic. I want to know if that's true because you're going to play a Jalen Lucas running back who is freaking fast and is All-American as an all-purpose guy last year as a true freshman. Watch that space, guys. He's really good. You're going to need athletes to corral him because he's small. And
sorry, man, I had a flinch there. I thought I saw Donovan Edwards running down the field at me again.
So like Jalen Lucas,
fourth quarter was crazy.
Jalen Lucas is fast, and he's a good all-purpose player. He's a good returner. He needs to be limited, and your athletes are going to get you there. And so that's the thing is like, are they going to play as athletic as this defense can play?
Andy Backstrom.
Look, everyone's thinking about it. I'm going quarterbacks. Yeah, quarterbacks. The timing of recording this, still not named a QB1 for Ohio State. We all think both are going to play in that Week 1 game against Indiana. I just want to know if they have a starting quarterback. Ohio State believes it does have a starting quarterback. They don't know which one yet for the whole season. They believe they have one in the two of Devin Brown and Kyle McCord. It doesn't really matter to me which one they choose, as long as one of them proves that they can be a starting quarterback this weekend at Indiana.
Yeah. Blonde-haired guy, auburn-haired guy, you know. Once they put the helmet on, unless he got a little coming out the back, who cares as long as they're throwing pinpoint passes? My question is, Ryan Day has put out too many hints out there that he's going to be calling the plays again, right? Mm-hmm. And it looks like Ryan Day is going to be calling the plays. Does he bring Brian Hartline along in that regard as this game goes on? Guys, as you well know, you've both been covering college football for a while. It's hard to tell who's calling plays sometimes, most of the time, etc. It was never really clear. Jim Tressel never really owned up to the fact that he was calling plays, even though he was. If the two play choices are coming in this year, and then the one choice is coming out your mouth, then you called the play, right?
Yeah.
But Ryan Day, the closer he got to this season, he put out too many big hints that he was going to, you know, got to do what he's got to do, which is call plays. We made such a big ballyhoo about that in the winter and spring when Ryan Day talked about stepping back and becoming more of a overall omniscient head coach as opposed to a glorified offensive coordinator calling plays. As this season fast approaches, yes, he's got Brian Hartline in as his offensive coordinator. This time a year ago, Kevin Wilson was the offensive coordinator, now the head coach at the University of Tulsa. So it'll be interesting to see how this season goes on, whether Ryan Day can step back a little bit more and hand more of those reins to Brian Hartline. Personally, I don't think it makes that big a difference. And I think if Brian Hartline is going to be your play caller down the road, the more you get him involved, the better off you are. But of course, there are going to be other games coming up. This is a conference opener. This isn't, you know, hosting Troy. This isn't hosting Rice. This is a conference opener on the road. You can feel the tension sort of building for the number 3 team in the country. And the tension definitely finally sits. It manifests itself with the head coach coming off 2 seasons when they've lost the final regular season game to Michigan. When the spotlight is really on Ryan Day, I think he's feeling it more and more as this season approaches. So that's what I'm seeing. One last word from you. Anything you want to throw on the Tim May Show?
Ryan Day talked about letting it all hang out.
I'm going to look at my watch like you just did.
With the Georgia thing. I was just seeing what time it was.
I'm just
curious guy. Ryan Day kind of talked about letting it all hang out and being super aggressive against Georgia.
I'm writing about that this week.
I need to see that 14, 15 times this year. Stop saving that. Be aggressive. If you're an aggressive head coach, be aggressive. Don't change who you are based on your opponent. Don't change who you are based on the Michigan game. Don't change who you are because you're playing Youngstown State. If you need to score 42 in the first quarter against Youngstown State, do it. However it plays out, be aggressive. If I see a more aggressive Ryan Day, it's going to make me much more confident in this team moving forward.
Yeah, it's the little things for me, and it goes along with that. Procedural things. Are there false starts week 1? You're on the road. It's the Big Ten. I know it's Indiana, but it's still on the road. Big Ten game. How's that offensive line doing with procedural, operational things? How is the offense as a whole doing with that, with Brian Hartline as the OC? How is special teams performing overall with potential, well, a new kicker? It's going to be one of the two of them. Are there mixed extra points? Are there missed field goals? All those little things, because they're going to win this game, I'm confident in saying, by multiple scores.
Hey,
okay?
save that for Friday.
Okay. But I'm just saying that it's going to be the little things. It might not really matter at the end of the day against Indiana, but will certainly matter as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm going to not overreact from whatever I see on Saturday at Indiana for the number 3 team in the country, Ohio State, unless it's a loss. Unless it's a tighter game than we're anticipating, unless it's a one-score game, then I'm going to overreact to a certain extent. But openers are made for blunders. They're made when you've got a first-time starting quarterback, when you've got 3 new starters on your offensive line, you know, you're going to have some mistakes. They're going to happen. That's why I anticipate Ohio State lining up and trying to run the ball right down Indiana's throat, because Indiana's going to come after them. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at them from a defensive exotics kind of standpoint. If you run the ball down a team's throat, that backs them off to a certain extent. So we'll see where that goes. I know Spence keeps looking at his watch, except when he's talking. If you
recruiting reporter Matt Parker just called me, and I had to send it to voicemail because I'm talking to you. See, yeah. Matt Parker right there.
Gotcha. Maybe he's got a breaking news story.
Who knows? Go to LettermenRow.com and find out.
LettermenRow.com, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it's all going to be. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching this team finally. Guys, we talk about it so much, right?
Yeah.
Finally play a game so we have some real stuff to talk about. So until next week, for Spencer Holbrook, for Andy Backstrom, and yours truly, Tim May, we'll see you then.